It's just not acceptable to lose the homes of hundreds of millions of people over time. And that's not an outcome that the world can accept.
In this special ClimateGenn episode, I speak with the late climate veteran Rafe Pomerance. I recorded this at the Arctic Repair Conference hosted by the Centre for Climate Repair in the summer of 2025. Rafe died recently, so this is a tribute to him and his long career as a climate action advocate since the 1970s. Nearly 50 years on from when he started making people aware of the need for action to avert the worst of climate change, Rafe was still trying to get the world to listen right up to the end. There is a more detailed overview of Rafe's professional achievements in the notes. Thanks as always to everyone who comments, subscribes and shares. It is very much appreciated. The next episode with Mike Berners-Lee is about to go live, and I also have a long interview with climate analyst Genevieve Walker recorded to discuss the massive risk of maladaptation that we're facing right now. I'll upload that early to the members area while we go through the backlog. Thank you very much. Rafe, it's great to see you.
Good to see you.
Last time I saw you here in Cambridge, I think it was about 8 years ago, in around 2018, 2017, 2018, you said that the fate of Miami is tied to the fate of Greenland. That was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
2025, what's your message now?
Absolutely the same, except that that Greenland is in the global news, thanks to our president, and it's possible to tie this connection now much more strongly. The important issue in Greenland is the fate of the ice sheet. It's 24 feet of sea level rise, ultimately. So the world has to tackle the ice sheets and control them. And so we're actually in a better place now to talk about Greenland than we were then. At that time, Trump made a proposal to buy Greenland. We jumped on that because it's the obvious point to be made. But now it's even more apparent, and so we're trying to bring that forward again.
But in that time as well,
Yeah.
we're starting to see impacts much more viscerally.
Yes.
And how does that, from your perspective as someone who lives on the east coast of America, how does that impact the way people think about climate science? Is it
Right.
from an
Well,
US
I
perspective?
think that there's a much greater awareness of the impacts, as you say, that we're seeing impacts, particularly sea level rise, among others. Coral bleaching is another. There are many. But sea level rise is sort of universal in its effect. And it can drive policy. So what we're trying to do is to turn the sea level rise issue into a driver of national and global policy.
And how much traction have you had with that so far?
We're early. I think we're getting there in terms of being able to convince leaders to take this on. In other words, I can see a scenario in which 10 U.S. senators and governors simultaneously step out on the beaches of their states and call for this global upper limit to sea level rise. I mean, it's an opportunity for global leadership.
And you're talking about the US, and obviously
Yes.
the federal level is kind of going backwards on policy,
Right.
but you've got a lot of momentum at state level.
Right.
And these impacts are global. We heard from a lady
Yes.
from Tuvalu
Yeah.
earlier today.
Right.
When you use that plural, leaders, are you actually thinking across a more global context?
Absolutely global leadership. There's an opportunity here for leaders from the island states, from coastal nations, from across the globe to step out on this. And we have been in the situation where the only metric to the global solution is the temperature metric, which has been insufficient at driving and motivating policy. And our thought is that the sea level rise metric, as a second supplementary metric, can drive policy and solutions. Now, will it happen? Not clear, but it's an idea.
Now, even if you got the traction that you're hoping for, the Greenland ice sheet is in a state of decline
Yes.
that that can't be stopped, but it can be slowed, as I
Yes.
understand it from speaking to
Right.
scientists. What do you think we should do if you got the attention you needed to do something?
Well, our goal, the way we define an upper limit to sea level rise, is to achieve the lowest possible rate of increase. That means, in effect, zeroing emissions out globally. But so that you achieve that result. And the same is true of Greenland. I mean, if you lower the temperature of the Earth, you slow the rate of loss, and that's the point initially. Now, what's being discussed here about Arctic repair? Who knows how much more we can do in an innovation context about saving the ice sheets. We have to save Greenland. We have to save Antarctica. These are catastrophic impacts, and so the world of innovation, is before us. There may be more things we can do, but for the moment, I think it is sufficiently accurate to say we ought to be slowing the rate of increase to the minimum.
And you're at a geoengineering and an Arctic-specific intervention conference. A lot of
Yes.
the stuff going
Yeah.
on here. Do you advocate for, if the research went the right way, would you advocate for deployment to stop or slow the rate of losses?
Yes.
You would be
yes.
strong.
Well, we're going to hear about different technologies that have reached a state of ability to test them or what have you. We should be doing that. We should be doing the research. We should be doing the testing, because we need to know if we have the options. We need to know that. And I don't think it's clear yet that we know that sufficiently for the public to embrace it.
You've been in government in the US.
Yes.
In the 90s. You've been at the top of international NGOs. You've got that perspective.
Yeah.
You also know that everything that you're saying, whether it's reducing emissions or giving the go-ahead for interventions, is rife with political trauma in a way.
Right.
And do you realistically see a way through that?
Well,
I'm talking about pathway to the future
yeah.
that we
Well,
can believe in.
the way the particular initiative we've embraced is based on the theory that the impacts can drive policy. If we're going to lose the coastal world around the globe, that's redundant, but to say we're going to lose the coastal world, that may be enough to drive this, with political leadership out in front. Right now, we're in a period of time where political leadership is pretty weak on this, I would say. But that can change. And the data that we're seeing from the scientific community is really scary. So it has been for a long time. But maybe it's sufficient now to drive policy. And going back to the initial question, if the population of Florida comes to understand that the fate of Greenland is the fate of Florida, maybe this all gets put together at some point.
But the thing is, the fate of Miami is
Yes.
usually to build great big defences
Yeah.
and accept tidal flows down high streets, whereas the Tuvalu population are facing existential risk, which they
Right.
can't really do anything about.
Right.
How do we balance those in terms of maximising your message?
Well, I think leadership can come from all kinds of places that are, facing massive sea level rise. It can come from Tuvalu, and it can come from Miami. They all have a similar interest in slowing this as much as possible, and our point is to try to make it happen by providing a platform or an idea that allows it to happen.
And if you were going to leave the audience and the people who are listening to you now with one resounding message, the reason why you came here, what's your one message?
Well, my resounding message is that embracing an upper limit to sea level rise can drive policy across the board. And that this second metric in the climate system can drive policy at all levels across the board now. And it has to happen.
Okay, it's an optimistic message at a kind of a pessimistic time, I'd say.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've been doing this for almost 50 years, so we've been through a lot of different moods on the subject. And we reached, under President Biden, the United States embraced the largest program to combat the emissions of greenhouse gases in history, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. It was massive, and Trump is tearing it apart, and the MAGA movement and all of that. It's a real tragedy. But there we were, as a country, doing as much as our imagination would have it, putting together one piece of legislation.
Okay, well, one more question to end on then, to follow on from that point.
Yeah.
As America retreats from this sort of global leadership position, and it does look like China is coming in to fill that.
Right.
There's talk of Xi Jinping coming to COP30.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Does that make you anxious, or is it a relief that maybe America hasn't
No, I
achieved?
think, in the climate context, it's probably a relief, because what you need are substitute technologies for the energy, for the carbon-producing technologies that are omnipresent in the world. And the Chinese have developed options and produced them. So I don't see the Chinese challenge as kind of a threat. Maybe it's going to help.
So with the 50 years and very varied and in-depth experience you've had, how does it leave you feeling right now? You still see pathways out, not out of it, but around and through this?
Yes, I do. I always have. And, we've developed this idea. We'll see. This is a pretty powerful idea. And we have to stay at it. It's just not acceptable to lose the homes of hundreds of millions of people over time. And that's not an outcome that the world can accept. So, yes, I think we can move it.
That's a great place to end. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
If you are concerned about the future, then why not travel with me through every COP conference from COP21 in Paris to COP28 in Dubai by ordering my book COP Out: How Governments Have Failed the People on Climate. In COP Out you'll gain insights into what is actually going on in these supposed world-saving conferences and how we have ended up in this dire era of dangerous consequences. You can order COP Out via the link in the notes or on any online bookstore worldwide in paperback or audio version.